Welcome back to the Molloy Twins Podcast. And before we get into today's episode, we'd just like to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Website for Trades.
Websites for Trades is a business that's set up by Clondalkin local Luke Corrigan and aims to provide affordable but profitable services focused on websites, logos, marketing, social media and videography. It's for tradespeople around Ireland looking to get ahead online. And if you'd like to find out more about the business, you can find them through www.websitesfortrades.ie or on Instagram.
And if you're not a tradesperson, but you would still like to avail of these services, then Luke still has you covered, because he also runs serodigital.io, which is a more general agency that can help you with all of the above. You can find them out at www.serodigital.io or on Instagram. Everything will be linked in the description.
Welcome back to the Molloy Twins Podcast, and today we're joined by someone whose name you probably know, but the man behind it not so much. For the last couple of decades, he's been helping the people of Ireland to find the right properties to live in, get the right price for their places, and building one of the most recognisable names and brands in the real estate industry. And he's here today with us to chat about all things business, entrepreneurship and the state of the property market in Ireland. Ray Cooke.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for the intro.
Doing well.
That was a good intro.
It's a very good intro. Yeah, Jesus, thank you.
We like to start on a peak because it tends to go downhill from here. We always like to kick things off though with a little bit of a quick fire just to get the juices flowing. And me and Lee always have questions that we're interested to throw at the guests. First one's from me, and as someone who's had an amazing career so far as an entrepreneur and in business and what you've managed to achieve with the business overall, is there any entrepreneurs that you looked up to early on as kind of role models or people who you took a lot from?
Yeah, like I was blessed. Like I was saying to you earlier on there, I'm from Racoole in County Dublin there, and when I was growing up, Racoole was a small enough place, but luckily enough we had Louis Fitzgerald, who would be Louis Fitzgerald Hotel, and he'd own the quays and the Putcheen Still and everything around there. He actually gave me my first job in the Putcheen Still. Another one was Austin McHale as well, famous rally driver. He's my best friend's father as well. And these guys all were started with nothing, and probably multi-millionaires now, or in their industries, well known. And I suppose when I was growing up, I was looking at these from afar, and I was kind of going, geez, if they can do it, maybe I could do it.
That's unreal, especially to have them. Most of the people we look up to and our generation will be online, so it'll be like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. Or steadily you had people in real life you could like physically see and be with, and they could be a
and it was great. I think nowadays I do feel sorry for, I suppose, your generation. I'm not that much older, because I'm only in my early 40s, but but I think it's sometimes it's an unrealistic goal there, where you're looking at Musk or you're looking at someone who's a billionaire or trillionaire. Yeah. You don't have to to have a good life. You can have a couple of houses, rentals, or you can have a small business and you can have a good life. I suppose, what do you want? But the problem is, when you have that, you're going to be happy then. And this is probably what social media has built for your generation. There, is it going to be enough? You have to be driving a Lamborghini,
Second quick fire question, which is coming from me as a man who spent a long time in the property sector, and the only experience I really have with it is from television shows you would watch and things like that. And the thing that people always seem to talk about is location. Even there's a show, location. Quick fire question. Would you rather have a great house in a terrible location or a terrible house in a great location?
In terms of making money off it, it doesn't matter about location. I always tell my clients, don't buy with your eyes, buy with your head. Okay, so the common mistake that people do when you are buying a property is, oh, that looks nice. Oh, I'd love to live in that location, city centre or Ballsbridge or whatever. But it's not. It's too expensive. And then you go to live in it or you go to rent it out. You're not making your money on it if you're renting it out. And then if you're going to live in it, you're probably not going to make your money when you go to sell it, because you're paying too much for it as well. So, or maybe you're living beyond your means then as well, which is the boring side of it. But this is what people do, like if you go back to the Celtic Tiger crash there, I remember going out to the bank, were selling us out to do valuations on people, and they're about to lose their house, but they have a Range Rover in the driveway. You're kind of going, lads, sell the Range Rover, cop onto yourself, But it was all, as I call it, Instagram kind of thing, it was all about show. And I suppose to answer your question, I would, depends, if you're going to live in your own house, you want to live in a good area, you want to get good schools, you want to be beside, I moved away from Racoole, then moved back, so again, I have my friends there, my kids are going to the local schools there, I'm in the local GA clubs, and I like that, but other people would move away because they want to move into different areas. But it depends what you want, so personally, for your own home, you want to go somewhere where you like, where there's going to be, in a couple of years' time for you lads, I don't know if you have kids already, but when you have kids and stuff like that, where it's going to be a good area. And plus as well, you want to be beside the babysitters as well, you know what I mean? So the grandparents, you don't want to be too far away from them as well. So so like I said, I think if you're buying for your own house, buy what you can afford, and then trade up the ladder then as well. That's what, unfortunately, the way prices are going, that's what you're going to have to do. The day is gone where you'll be able to go off and buy a big 3-bed, 4-bed house now in one go. You'll have to probably buy the first house, and to get up to your best or your top house now, you'll have to probably move 2 or 3 times to get up to that level, I'd say, you know.
Okay,
that's a great point. I never really thought of it like that, because when you're starting off driving a car, unless, I don't know, you come from money, like you'll start off with a little banger and then move on to the next thing, and then eventually end up with, like, I don't know, Range Rover or whatever. But I always, even for me, I always had this thought that, like, like your house is, you buy your house and then that's you for life, as opposed to looking at it like that.
And this is the common mistake, because again, you know, with the offices that we have, like, we cover all over Dublin now, and we're probably the 3rd biggest selling agent in Dublin now as well, probably Sherry, Fitzgerald and D&G, and then ourselves probably for volume. And like, obviously we're dealing with hundreds if not thousands of clients every year, and the main problem that you see with these guys is that they want to buy mammy's and daddy's house straight away. You know, where do you want to live? Oh, well, I want to live in this house, but you're kind of going, well, that's 500,000 or it's 700,000. What wages are you on? Oh, I'm on 35 grand. You're kind of going, you're not going to get that. No. So I think renting is dead money, you know, and too many people now, especially coming out of the Celtic Tiger crash there as well, they were being advised, rent, it's more flexible, you can move when you want to move and this and that. But you're paying off the landlord's mortgage, or you're topping up their pension fund, you know. So look, it's fine for me to say that, like, but again, I don't come from money, so I've worked for everything, like, you know, but there is sacrifice you have to make, and once you make that sacrifice, get on the ladder. And it doesn't matter if it's a 1-bed apartment or it's a 3-bed house or whatever it is. And if you have to move away from your area, like I had the choice when I bought my first house. I was 22 when I bought my first house, and I was in Australia when I was 21 for a year. I came back, my brother was getting married, so I knew I'd only get like 11 and a half months traveling, and I went traveling. All my mates are in apprenticeships or in college or whatever like that, and I knew I wanted to get into the estate agency, so I kind of said I'll go now, because if I wait until 22, 23, I could be 25 coming back. So when I was younger, I was very kind of focused, and I'm not saying I'm not focused now, but I was very, when I was younger, focused. I wanted to be, I remember someone asked me when I was 10 or 11 what I wanted to be, and I didn't care what I wanted to be. I just wanted to be a millionaire. You know what I mean? I just loved money, you know, and I wanted to be a millionaire. But again, you worked hard, but I suppose I got off the point a little bit there. But the main thing is, buy a property. It doesn't matter what property it is, and it doesn't matter where it is. I bought my first property. I had the choice of buying in 2002. I had a budget, I think, of 225, and I could have bought a 1-bed apartment in Dublin. I think it was around Clondalkin or Tala or something like that. Or I could have bought a 4-bed house in Kilcullen, which is the far side of Naas there, like, you know. And I bought the 4-bed in Kilcullen because it was a 4-bed house.
Naturally enough.
Now, as a 23-year-old, by the time I moved into it, like I said, it probably wasn't socially wasn't the best place down there. None of the lads are coming down there. They were going the other way into town, like, you know what I mean, and whatever. So socially, it probably wasn't the best. But you know what? Because of that house and because of the sacrifice I made to buy that house, I was able to remortgage that house to set up my business when I was 24. You know what I mean? So, and opened my first office 2 weeks after turning 25. So all through my 20s, and by the time I was 25, I had 3 properties, you know? So 26 maybe. So like I said, I had 3 properties.
Okay.
And that's a different story. Obviously, the Celtic Tiger crash happened then, and then I lost everything. I wouldn't lost everything, but everything went tits up, I suppose. But the main thing, I suppose, is you sacrifice, you get up on the ladder, and that's what I'd advise any of you to do as soon as you have that deposit. Don't be waiting to buy that house in, you know, in Bonog and Clondalkin beside your parents, because that's a fine 3-bed semi house, like, you know. Buy a house, and if you have to move down to Kildare, or you have to get on the ladder, and once you get up on the ladder, it's so much easier, because in 5 years' time, you've paid off 5 years of your mortgage. More than likely, the value of that house has gone up, and you have equity in the property then. So once you have equity, then you can go up and buy that. I can come back up to Dublin and buy the bigger house and go again if you have to. But the problem, again, going what you guys had was, not you guys, your generation, the ones that are in their probably 20s now or maybe early 30s, you came out of the Celtic Tiger crash where property values are really low, and you could buy a big 4-bed in Rathfarnham for 300,000. That house now was probably 700,000 or 800,000 now, and then you were used to buying stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, as the prices have gone up, you're kind of going, values are terrible. But it's going back to the way it was, that you had to buy a 1-bed or a 2-bed apartment, and then buy your 2-bed or 3-bed house, and then maybe buy your big 3-bed or 4-bed house, like, and go from there. I know it's quick fire. I'm kind of long-winded answer there now, guys.
I'm enjoying it. I have to say.
It's putting things in a context, the way looking at that I didn't even consider, which is why we wanted to do these podcasts in the first place.
Exactly. Especially speaking to people like yourself, people who are whatever 40s later on in life. and they've kind of been there, they've done that, and it always brings back to me that Steve Jobs quote of you can only connect the dots looking backwards. Looking forwards, it's so hard to see. How am I going to get on the property ladder? How am I going to have this lovely 4-bed house close to home? Speaking to somebody like you who's been there, who's done that, who's seen other people on that journey, as Adam said, it puts a different layer of context and also a sort of a structure to how you can attack this joint problem that a lot of young people face in terms of how do I get in the property ladder.
Just do it. You know what I mean? And get your head down, and whatever, it doesn't matter if you're on 25 grand or you're on 50 grand or 75 grand, save minimum 25%. You know what I mean? Like, and it's a sacrifice, but the way I always looked at it was, you know, I was maybe on 2.5 grand and I was probably saving 800 quid a month, 900 quid a month, you know what I mean? And then, you know, at one stage I was living at home with mum and dad, you know, so I was probably giving them 50 quid a week as well. But then I was drinking the rest of it, or, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? And I was bringing in a packed lunch with me, you know what I mean? Like, so my mum was probably obviously paying for that, like, but you know what I mean? But I was bringing, so I'd eat my lunch or whatever, and then I was saving, you know, and then all of a sudden you were saving a 10 grand deposit or you were saving whatever, and that's the way to do it. And then it's a sacrifice of 2 years or whatever. You're buying on your own, it's probably 2 years, 2.5 years, and buy what you can afford, because again, you can only buy for 4 times your salary. So if you're on 50 grand, you can buy for 200. If you're on less, you've got to buy for less. So you have to tie in, and there's no point sulking and saying, geez, I don't want to live in Finglas, or I don't want to live in somewhere like that. Buy a property, get on the ladder. If you're lucky to buy a house or a 2-bed, rent out the other room then as well. Don't be kind of going, I don't want to live with anyone. Rent out the other room, because you can rent out a room now, a double room, for 800 quid, 900 quid a month. You know what I mean? Your mortgage might be only 14, 15, 100 quid. So then you could be you're only paying 600 of a mortgage yourself. If you're saving 800 or 900 quid, you can be still saving 300 or 400. And you know what? In 2 or 3 years' time, if you're not earning more money in 2 or 3 years' time, you're in the wrong industry. You should be, every year, you should be earning more and more money. So that's the way I look at it, like I said. And look, I was a hungry bastard when I was younger. I still am a hungry bastard, but I was just, that was where I was. I was like, I want to buy a property, and then any property I bought, I'd live in, and then I'd buy the next one and rent that one out, you know, and go. And then that's what we did, like, you know, and that's the best way to do it, like, and that's the way I'd advise it, like, if you can, but you work your arse off, you know?
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
And don't worry about your circle of friends, you know, like my mates are in Thailand and Vietnam and, you know, having great crack, you know, and I was setting up my business. You know, I had 2 properties at that stage, you know, and now the lads have all done done well for themselves afterwards, but that was the way I was focused, you know. Now they probably were laughing when the recession probably happened in the Celtic Tiger crash, and you know, everything fell down. They're like, oh, fuck, I'm glad I went traveling for 3 years, you know, where my attitude was, I wanted to build something up, and I suppose, for that 5 or 6 years during the Celtic Tiger crash, it was shit. Like,
I can imagine,
it was, as I call it, was beans on toast time. Like, it was just, I remember not having enough money there. I had to go around to my mum's to actually get fed. You know, I didn't have money. I had money to pay the mortgage because interest rates went up, everything went up. You know, and just to keep things going. And it was tough times. But if you keep it going, then, and you get through it, it kind of stands to you then at the end then as well. You know, and it's always, if you work hard in your 20s and your early 30s, you can relax then when you hit 40
later
or
on,
you know what I mean? Whereas you see so many people waiting until their 30s to start doing stuff, and then they're still paying a mortgage at 60, 65.
Yes,
There's a sacrifice coming either way. It's just, are you doing it early?
Yeah, you just jump into it or
do it when you're young, when you can. Like, I was working 80-hour weeks, you know, and just fucking work it, you know, just do it, like, you know. And I don't understand, and the people bitch and moan, you know, and I have a saying, I say to my kids and I say to the people in work as well, there's 2 types of people. There's doers and there's moaners. The doers go out and do it, you know. The moaners moan about the doers. You know, they be bitching and moaning, oh, look at him and look at that. Where the fella just gets on and does it, you know, and that's, you have to decide who you're going to be in life, like, you know, grab it and go out and do it, or bitch and moan about the fella that does.
Great point. We call this quick fire, but honestly, feel free to take as long as you want.
Sorry,
there's a lot of value in these answers.
Yeah.
No, honestly, don't feel any pressure. And this next question I have for you is out of personal interest, because I know that you said, buy a property, get on the ladder. Naturally enough, over time, the house price will increase, and then your wages will increase and everything else. Something people mention is like doing work to their properties to increase the value of the property, which sounds interesting. I'm not really sure how that works. Could you explain to me in a quick fire way, how can you increase the value of your property? Yeah,
you can do loads of stuff. Like, you put in your main rooms in a house are your kitchen and your bathrooms, you know, so that's and they're probably the most expensive rooms as well, you know. New windows, we call it retrofitting. So like, retrofitting would be like you're trying to up the BER, you know, the energy rating on the property. So doing things like that, you could be putting in dry lining, which is like insulation, windows, etc., etc. But if you're trying to add value to the property, it's people buy with their eyes, like I said earlier on.
Yeah.
So it's cosmetic stuff, you know. So sometimes it's not the invisible stuff that you going in and rewiring the house and replumbing it and putting all the fancy stuff in. Because what happens then is a slab of plasterboard goes over that and you don't see it, you know. So a lot of the time it is the kitchen. So if you ever buy a bad house and you say, I'm going to try to make money on this, you know, the expression is, I remember when I was being trained up when I was 22, 23 by a Liam Short and Cork fella, he said, like I said, you tart the house up, you know. you slap a bit of lipstick on it, you know. So what it is get a new kitchen or put a new counter in, put a new splashback on it, you know. Paint the place, put a cheap carpet, put a cheap timber floor down, like, you know. And then all of a sudden the first time buyer comes in and they're buying with their eyes, you know. And they're like, oh wow, look at this, it's brand new, everything's clean. They're not realising it's a cheap laminate floor, it's really cheap carpet, there's no underlay in it. They're just buying with their eyes. It's only when they move in afterwards they're going to go, this is terrible carpet, you know. So that's what I'm saying. If you're that way inclined, there's not really much money to really make there, to be honest, because in the English market you could go over to England and buy a property and it could be 100 sterling, you know, 100,000 sterling, obviously, and then, you know, you could put 25 into it and you could sell it for 175. You know what I mean? Like, whereas over here, you won't really get away with that, because you could have a house and it could be, you know, let's just say it could be a young couple went in and bought it and did it up and spent 150 grand on it, and then they could sell that, and that could sell for 475, 480. But then you could have the grandmam's house 3 doors down that comes up for sale and has the carpet since the 1980s and the kitchen since the 80s and 90s, and then that could sell for 400, you know. So that doesn't make sense, that the young couple's house that has done everything. But in Ireland, people are buying because they want to buy the location. So going back to maybe one of your first questions, people want to live in a certain location, or maybe their mum lives around the corner, or maybe they're buying in that location because the school is up the road that they want to get the kid into, so they're paying extra to get into a location. You know, so, and that's what normally happens there, like, you know.
Interesting distinction, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very. I'm learning a lot. I like it. For you, as someone who's had success in the real estate market and the property world, let's call it, it seems like one of those industries that's kind of sexy. It's like when Suits came out and everyone wanted to be in law. It's like $1 billion listings and all these programs, or Selling Sunset that was on Netflix, all these, and people are like, oh, I want to get into real estate, that looks class. What would you say is like the most important character trait or skill or mindset that someone needs to have to succeed in that world?
It's not as glamorous as you think. It's tough, like, as in, it's mentally tough, because you're dealing with, they say number 2 in the stress list, after number 1 is a family debt, and number 2 is buying and selling a house for stress.
Really,
So if you can imagine,
what about being a Villa fan? Where does that?
Being an Aston Villa fan over, well, not so, you know, I'm on the up now at the moment, you know, but maybe the last 5, or maybe in the last 10 years now, when we're in the championship and everything wasn't so good now. But yeah, it's a great job. Now I love it because you're meeting someone different every day. It's absolutely top class. You're going out and you're in control of your own destiny in a way, because if you give a good service, you know, if I go out and sell your house, you know, you're going to turn around and, as I would say, you're going to be my cheerleader. Because, and I can't control what you'd say about me afterwards, you know. So so if I come along and I do a brilliant job, and it doesn't matter about getting you 50 grand over what you want, or anything, it's about giving you a service, because the easy part is going out and viewing the house and negotiating and getting it and sale agreeing it for whatever the price is. The hard part then is, once you go sale agreed, is the solicitors and the banks and the surveyors, that's the stressful part, because it's out of your control, because there's 7 or 8 or 9 different people that have to do their job, and all it takes is one of them not doing their job and it slows down the whole thing. And then if you're buying on then as well, it's a very stressful thing then as well, like, you know. So
true.
So there's a chain, as it's called, as well. So but the job, it's brilliant. So to answer your question, I love it. But it's tough, because you're dealing with people. The calmest of people turn into absolute lunatics when they start selling a house, because it's such an emotional journey. Because when you buy a house, it's like if you buy a car. You were talking about cars earlier on. You buy a car, fuck, I don't like that car, I'll trade it in within 6 months. You know, not often you'll do that, but you can. If you buy a house, you're not trading, you're not selling it after 6 months, because it costs too much to buy it, with solicitors' fees and everything else. So you're going to live in that house, and it's also your home. You know, so it's an emotional thing. So, but you see a lot of people that I think thought it would be like Selling Sunset was a classic, like, you know, and coming in their designer,
Yeah.
you know, shoes and their dresses and the suits and the no socks and the, you know, like, whatever. You know, you go up to Bon Og like that.
Yeah,
now, like,
that's
you know,
not- yeah.
you'll be chased out, like, you know. But like I said, you know, it's a great job. It's a savage job. It really is. But it's an unsociable job. So if you think of it there, you know, if you're coming to view a house, what time do you want to view the house at?
Evening time,
After work or on a weekend. So anyone that comes into this job that thinks they can't work evenings and can't work
weekends,
you know, so you have to be working 50, 60-hour weeks to be successful. You know, because you have to, and then you have to be on the phone, you have to be doing this and that. Whereas a lot of young people now that are listening to this, you know, quite quitting and all this kind of nonsense, you know, and saying, oh, well, once I only get paid 40 hours a week. You can't in this job because it's mainly a commission job, you know. And again, you're stressed out your eyes. There's a deal, you know. You're trying to buy off someone, you know. You're trying to find out what the crack is. You go home and your missus is absolutely killing you, whatever. And you're like, okay, Ray, what the hell is going on? You have to be able to take that phone call on a Saturday or a Sunday or 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock in the morning, because they can't take calls during the day, so you have to ring it before they go into work. So you have to be. And again, that's part and parcel of the job. It's a savage job, but again, like any job, it's very rewarding financially, but
you work for it.
You work for it. You have to deal with the stress,
you
know. And a lot of people, they can't deal with it because it's just kind of like they can't deal with the anxiety of telling telling someone bad news.
Yes,
In our job, we're, you know, we get probably one yes out of 20, you know. So you have to be getting no the whole time. You have to be telling people no. It's a tough, that side of it is tough, like, you know. So, and then as well, like if you are a sales or a letting agent, you know, you could have 10 people bidding on a house, you know, and only one person gets it.
Yeah.
So you have 9 people blaming us, even though they're outbid. But like I said, you have 9 people probably, you know, annoyed with you then and pissed off at you. But look, that's the way it goes. Like the highest bidder gets it or the best buyer gets it, you know.
No more quick fire. There's so many questions I have.
You know, they were quick fire, probably 20 minutes, but
23 minutes, bang on. But no, it's all good, man. I every single answer there I took something from, and I'm just kind of replaying it in my mind. I don't even know where to start this conversation. There's about 10 different entry points that I can see. Do you have any particular place you want to make a start on?
The natural place to start is like, so Ray, how did you end up in real estate? But to be honest, like what I really want to understand is, as two people who have had different guests obviously on that seat and who've given different interpretations of what's going on in the property market and stuff like that at the moment, I really just want to hear from you, who's like in the trenches day in, day out, dealing with people. Like, explain to us like we're 2 5-year-olds with low IQs. It's like, what is the reality of the Irish property market at the moment? Why is it so difficult? Is it as difficult as the media portrays to get on the property ladder? Like,
property prices are going up at the moment, and unfortunately they're going up at a really high pace because there's not enough properties to buy, okay? But because the country is doing well, loads of people are in employment, they're getting pay rises, and with inflation, prices have gone up, they're earning more money, so that means they're willing to pay more for properties. And because there's less properties, so the best way to look at this is if a girl is going into go shopping and she has a wedding coming up, and she walks into a shop and she's getting a black dress for the wedding, okay? And she walks in and there is 10 dresses in her size. She's going to look at it and like it, but what is she going to do? She's going to look around the rest of the shop, and she's going to go off and maybe look around the rest of the shopping centre, and she might come back next week or the week after and buy it or whatever.
yeah, there's no urgency.
But if she goes in and there's only one dress left in her size, she has to buy it because she's afraid she won't get it. So that's something like what's happening in the property market at the moment. There's very little stock there, so people are going crazy bidding on it and pushing prices up. Is it as hard to get on the property market? Like I said earlier on, I think people's lifestyles have gone. Like, I look at the staff there working for me at the moment, and the young lads and young people working there, and you know, they're buying 3 coffees a day. They're going out for their lunch every day. They're buying their lunch. They probably go out 2 or 3 nights of the week. They're out every weekend. So could they afford to buy a property? Yes. Of course, does that mean you're a born bastard for 6 months? Or it is. It's sacrifice.
Yeah.
So you have to weigh it up. Now, unless you're on stupid money, then you could be saving $2,000 a month,
Yeah.
But if you're a normal Joe Soap and you're on 30 to 50K, I think is the average wage. So if you're on something there, and if you take someone who's on 50K, they would be earning roughly around 3K a month. Okay. Are you going to tell me that they can't put away €1,000 of that a month, especially if they're living at home? If they're renting, it's a different story. But if they're living at home, they should be able to put away £1,000 a month. And if they can put away £1,000 a month, then they should be able to go off and buy a property, in my eyes, in a couple of years. Like, they'll have $12,000 at the end of the year. And if you're saving with your partner or your girlfriend, or you're going to buy, two brothers are going to buy together or something like that, you can double your money then as well. So it's not as hard as the media make out, but the media love, I think, negative news. It is hard, because if you want to buy that one property in, for example, your area, there's not many properties that have come up in your estate there at all,
Right, yeah.
Maybe there's probably 5 houses in the last year, So if you said I wanted to buy in there, you'll have to outbid everyone else that comes up in there.
Limited supply, yeah.
It's limited supply. So I suppose I'm going long-winded again, but it of course it's tough out there. All the banks are lending, so there's no issues with banks lending. You get the central bank rules were 3.5 times, now they're 4 times. So there is more lending out there for people to go off and buy. Is it tough? Of course it's tough.
Everything.
Of course it is. Because it is tough, So it's, you have to cut out, like, again, it's sacrifice.
Yes,
you sacrifice for 2 or 3 years, you'll be able to get on the ladder. And then the bigger picture is, once you get up on the ladder, you don't have to sacrifice as much, because you're paying your mortgage, and then your mortgage, or the value of your house, is going up and your mortgage is going down. So obviously you're making savings there. And then more than likely, like I said earlier on, the 4 or 5 years, your wages are going to continue to rise, and then you'll be able to afford to buy other property. So the main thing is get on the ladder. And once you get on the ladder, the property market is again, it is tough at the moment, as in, if you want to get certain house, because there's not enough houses. It's tough. It's tough out there at the moment to get on. But if you get mortgage approval, and you're, and you have to just, I don't know, it's very hard to explain it, but if you say, right, I want to buy in Tala, you have to be on the websites every single day. Houses will sell within a week.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So you could miss something. There could be one viewing, there could be 30 people at that viewing, and then it could be gone, above your asking price, or what you're willing to pay the following day. Like we've had houses that have gone well over 100K over the asking price,
No way.
Yeah, in the last couple of months there, it's gone crazy that way. And then other things, then you're finding it hard to sell, or again, people, the ones that are really nice go crazy, but then you could have one that's rented out, and it's not as nice, and it's selling for much better value. And as I always say this to the young couples as well, when they walk in, they see the flat screen TV, and they see the leather couches, and they see the big bed, not 4-post bed, but whatever, big bed, and da. But when you go into the house, the bed is gone, the TV's gone, the couches are gone, the tables and chairs are gone, So, and they're walking in kind of going, what the hell is this? So sometimes you are better off going off. If it was me, I'd buy the cheaper house. I'd always buy the cheaper house, because, especially when I have a wife like my own there, she's got to pull it out anyway and do it again. And you're better off, So, and that's what I'd always advise. Go with the cheaper one always, and do it up yourself, So we all have mates there that are, plumbers, or electricians.
Whether you trust them or not.
You might be chasing them for a while. They'll do a job now, alright, yeah. If they're like my mates anyway, you would.
Interesting. I have 2 questions off the back of that. The first one is, you were saying there, like, the important thing is just get on the property ladder. I know a lot of most of the work you do is just based within Dublin. Does that apply to outside of Dublin? Like,
everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. It doesn't matter where you're going to buy. Now, I'm not saying move down to Sligo, or, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Buy within. You have to be able to commute to work and everything like that. If you're working remotely, then you could obviously go off. But the main thing is get on the ladder. And once you get on the ladder, I'm telling you now, like, straight away, not only are you saving here and your own, out of your own wages, but then you're saving with your property, because, again, you're paying off your mortgage, and more than likely the value is going up there as well. So you've 2 saving pots then, and then it just gives you that, like, leverage. Once you get up there, it's 100 times easier then to go up the ladder and buy other properties then as well. So main thing is just sacrifice, put that year and a half in, get the deposit, go off and buy. And people think, I'm going to hold off and wait until the market crashes.
Yeah.
If you can predict that,
stop! Yeah,
you'll be a
crystal ball.
multi-millionaire. No one can predict that. No one knows when that's going to happen. And then as well, people always forget then as well, when there is a recession, when the property prices start falling, banks don't lend money.
Yeah.
So banks don't give out any mortgages. So you're thinking, oh yeah, sure, that house was 400 grand. Now it's 275k. The banks won't give you a mortgage because they're like, I'm not giving a loan out in case he defaults or he loses his job. So again, you can't bank. No one's buying properties. That's why prices are falling. And I think as well, we won't have another Celtic Tiger crash as well. Back in 2000 or back in the Celtic Tiger years, I think.
Could you just explain that actually as well? What was it that was going on around the Celtic Tiger and post?
So in the Celtic Tiger era, you had, the banks were just throwing out money, right? And you had 100% mortgages, right? So you didn't have to put down any deposits, okay? You could have... you could get 100% mortgage. You could go down to another bank or go to another credit union, and the credit union would give you 30 or 40 grand to do up the house. So not only would you be buying a house for 350 grand, but you could actually be in debt for 380 grand. You could have credit cards maxed out. You could have whatever. The banks were just throwing you money, and they turn around and say, how much money you on? Oh, I'm on 50 grand, but you're going to rent out to 2 rooms, aren't you? And you're like, oh no, I'm not going to rent out to 2 rooms. No, you're going to rent out to 2 rooms, and then all of a sudden you're talking about 12 grand each room. It's €1,000 a room, so that's another 24 grand income, and then they'd put it into the bank, and you'd even get even more money, and it was just mad. And then you could go off and buy investment properties. So you could have a normal fella there that was on 35, 50 grand, and they could have 10, 15 houses. It was crazy times, and the whole that time period, everyone was in the property game, everyone. And back then, if you talk about your 2005, 2007, not many people had internet or broadband at home. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like it is now. Back then, it was very much there wasn't that many, there was no tech jobs, very few tech jobs, there was no, so it was all builders, and builders were millionaires, and plumbers were millionaires. And, if you want to be labourers, you could be a labourer on a building site and be getting 1,200 quid a week into your hand.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And they were building 70, 80, 90,000 houses a year. They're struggling. They can't even do 30,000 now at the moment, And that's what I'm saying. And all of a sudden there was houses everywhere. There was apartments everywhere. You could buy down in Cork there, and sure, it was a bargain, and and everything. It was just crazy. And sure, how many houses do you have? You know what I mean? That was the conversation. And you're like, oh, geez, I've only 2, but that was the way it was. And everyone was kind of giving out 95 to 100% mortgages. It was crazy time.
At that time, why were the banks so willing to just throw money away?
There was so much money around. It was cheap money, and it was worldwide. It was everywhere. It was, I don't know, it was a famous film, The Big Short.
Yeah, I was going to mention it.
Brad Pitt and Steve Carell were in it and everything like that. And it just shows you, remember, I think it was a stripper, and he was like, how many mortgages do you have? Mortgage the house. See, back then there wasn't really computer systems, and everything was paper, and there was a lot of fraud that went on, and there was a lot of stuff that went on there, I'm not saying it was all fraud, but there was so much money that the banks, and there was a lot of EU money that came in originally, and it was crazy times. It was back then, it was everyone was going off on big holidays. Doesn't matter what you were. You could be in an ice cream van fella, and you had 20 ice cream vans, or you had this, and everyone had a rental home, and everyone was buying apartments in Bulgaria. Oh, sure, that's only 100k, she would buy 2 of them, she might as well.
In Spain and all the rest.
Spain and everything like this. And it was just crazy times. It was just huge money around the place. And then all of a sudden, it exploded because everyone, the banks and all these guys were gambling everything, and then all of a sudden people were defaulting. They couldn't keep up with it, and once interest rates went up, then all of a sudden it was kind of going, like I said, you were 100% mortgages, so there was no equity. So nowadays, max that you'll get is 90%. So you'll always have 10%.
Okay.
So if prices were to fall by 10%, you're okay. If you had to sell,
bit of a buffer,
So whereas in back then, all of a sudden, the rents weren't high. They were high for back then, they're obviously ridiculously high now. But back then, if you were talking about a 3-bed house along the M50 somewhere, you would have been talking about 1,150, 1,200 quid a month. You know? Yeah. But that was huge money because no one rented back then.
Okay.
Because there was people on the dole getting mortgages because they turn around and saying, right, you're on 12 grand a year. You're going to rent out 2 rooms, so that's another 24 grand. You're on 36 grand. Sure, we'll give you 6 times or 7 times and they give them a mortgage for 180, 200k. And people laugh at that. I swear to God, people are coming into us that were unemployed that were getting mortgages, and it was kind of like, this is just crazy. Like,
could you sense something was going to go badly wrong here?
Do you know what it was? It was a house in Neilstown in Clondalkin. And I remember up in Glenfield in Clondalkin, I won't say where because we only sold the house a couple of years ago again.
Fair
and
enough.
It was a young couple that bought it, and it was actually off. It was a soccer player who was playing over in the UK at that time, and it was his brother selling it.
Oh,
And I
say
remember-
people are starting to put some.
yeah, and people are probably adding up, but I remember selling the house, and it was a fine house, like, but back then it was anything up to 317,500, and there was no stamp duty on it, and anything over that then there was stamp duty on it, and it could have been 15 grand stamp duty, like, you know,
really?
because stamp duty was a couple of % higher back
It's an
then.
expensive stamp.
So, and we had this house priced at 290. So I pulled up in my car. I think I was driving a Mitsubishi Colt or some banger back then, or a Ford Mondeo or something. I don't know what I was driving. And I remember lads banging on the window, I'll offer 317,500 straight away. And I was going to go, okay, fucking let me get out of the car here, like, And I swear to God, there was probably 40, 50 people there, like, and and all on top of you. And I said, you haven't even seen the house yet. Come in and see it. No, but this was quite common, like, and we got into the house, and I said, you have to see the house. I'm not taking a bit off you until you see the house.
Yeah.
Then they come in, and it was crazy, like, they're running around the house, and y'all offer 370,500. Anyway, it went for 350. Right, and I remember it was a young couple that bought it, and I'm nearly sure he was an electrician or a plumber or something like that. And I remember her, like, again, I was only in my 20s back then, and she, like, two of them were probably similar age, so I got on great with them. And as I called her, a dolly bird, like, she had the hair and the nails and everything done, the eyelashes, and she was a beautician or something like that. But lovely, both of them were absolutely lovely couple, first time buyers buying it. They didn't even have a $5,000 deposit to give me. They were getting 100% mortgage, and they didn't have $5,000. And as you kind of get to know them and having the crack with them and talking to them, I think they had 3 credit cards all maxed out. So I think there was like something like 6 or 7 grand on each credit card. So whatever that is, about 20 grand, let's call it.
21 grand, yeah.
So 20 grand maxed out, no money. And then obviously they bought the property, and then probably 6 months later it went tits up. But I remember thinking, kind of going, we're fucked.
Yeah.
We are fucked. Honestly, I remember thinking that, and that was probably 2006.
Okay.
And I remember kind of going, oh shit.
And then shortly after the inevitable happened.
Yeah, and I had only set up my business in 2005,
yeah.
And November 2005, and I was only a year into it. I was only getting going, and I remember kind of going, shit. I'm after remortgaging my house. I'm after putting all my savings into this. I'm after putting everything into it. And then it was probably a couple of months after, we were still sale of green houses. And at first they bought the house, but then afterwards, and prices went even crazier then after that.
Yeah.
And it was back then, to show you how mad the property market was, like, you'd go, let's just say you went sale agreed on a house in January. And by the time you bought that house, it had gone up 50 grand.
Really?
Yeah. So what was happening a lot of the time was the people trying to, obviously you're buying off for buying a house as well, like, they were trading up, like.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden prices were going mad. So they'd come back to you and say, I need another 10 or 15 grand.
Yeah.
And you'd be going, I'm not paying 15 grand. You're kind of going, it's fucking gone up 50 grand. So pay them the 15 grand and sign the contract and get the deal done. Because if they withdraw from you, it goes back up in the market, we'll get 50 grand more, or 60 grand more, 70 grand more. And like, we're 2 weeks away from closing, 3 weeks away from closing here. Just pay the extra money and get the deal done. And that was the way it was, house prices were just going up and up and up, and they were doubling. And that's where, property millionaires came from, because but it was all paper money, it's like saying, I'm a millionaire, but you don't actually have $1 million euros in your bank. Some people do, but a lot of people don't. It's paper money,
assets,
it's assets. So it's all based on, like these billionaires we were talking about earlier on, do they actually have €1 billion in the bank account?
No, stock or whatever else.
Stock or shares or whatever like that. So and that was the way it was back then. Like, sure, geez, I'm a millionaire. Sure, I've 10 houses, but like how much, what are the mortgages on those?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's, sure, I have 10 million worth of assets, and I've 10 million worth of mortgages. Like, you know what I mean? You don't have anything, so the bank have it all, like, And the thing was, every property was linked to another property then as well.
Yeah,
that's exaggeration, 10 million, but like lads would have 5, 6, 7 properties. Like normal fellas, like I remember lads coming in buying stuff off me, and they'd be buying 3 houses at one time.
It's like going into a shop. She's like, that one.
There was guys buying houses, right? This is how crazy. You're asking how crazy Celtic Tiger was, right? There was lads buying houses, and they knew it was going to close next month, and they were already into another bank then to remortgage that house because they had 50 or 100 grand equity on it, and then they draw down the extra 100 grand and then bring that up to 100% mortgage and use that 100 grand and go off and buy 2 properties, 50 grand deposit each. And then, but in 6 months' time, they'd have bought another, so they'd have 3 properties, and then all 3 properties would have gone up by 50 grand again, and they'd remortgage the houses again, right? And they'd go off and buy another 3 houses. This, I know you're like shaking your head, but this is what went on. And just, it was built on, as I call it, deck of cards. You know,
that's it, exactly.
And then as soon as one card wobbled or it all fell down. And that's exactly what happened. Like, as in the banks called in their money, or they said, "Hold on, let's pay." And the rents were so low, then they were getting a return of maybe only 3%. And then as soon as interest rates went up, it went crazy. And it was tough times.
For sure.
Like, I don't want to be making a laugh of it. It was awful.
Oh yeah,
you know?
devastating for many.
Definitely. So back, say, pre-Celtic Tiger, the average profile of a first-time buyer would have been that kind of early 20s couple. Nowadays, in the current climate, what's the kind of profile of a first-time buyer?
First-time buyers are a lot of people coming into us in their late 20s, early 30s, late 30s now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's shifted a decent bit.
It's just shifted, like, you know. We have a lot of people there that have gone travelling, and they've been in Australia or Canada or whatever, and they're coming back and they're starting from scratch. For
literally
whatever
from
reason.
zero,
Yeah. And I think they're living in these places and having a great life and a great lifestyle, but they're renting. They're not buying.
Yeah.
And they're paying huge rents.
Yeah.
So they're earning huge money, but they're paying huge rents. And then, you know, like, Australia is great, like, but you're going out and you're paying $15 or $20 for a bottle of beer. You know what I mean? Like, so you think Temple Bar is bad, like, you know, that's what you're going out and paying, like, you know. So your lifestyle is higher, like, you know. It's a great lifestyle, and the sunshine, and who doesn't want that? But that's the problem. And then they're kind of coming back and they have 20, 30,000. But sure, in those 2 or 3 years they went away, the property prices have gone up 100,000.
So much, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So they haven't really, if they bought then, they would have been better off.
You're still playing catch-up.
Yeah, we're still playing catch-up, like, you know.
You made a good point earlier, which I found intriguing, about like, over in England, you could buy a house and put money into it and it would increase the value of the property, whereas in Ireland we're so location driven that making the house look nice doesn't necessarily mean you get a higher return on it than you would have otherwise. Is there anything else about the Irish property market that's, like, particularly unique to Ireland? Because I remember I used to love $1 million listings in New York, and it'd always be like, oh, you know, I want a penthouse in Manhattan, I want to overlook Central Park, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. What is it that would attract somebody into the Irish market, and what do you think is unique about it?
It can be unique. The uniqueness mightn't be positive. It might be negative as well. Like, if you ever look at Grand Designs or any of these shows, like, you ever see these houses that are built and you're like, wow, you never see anything like that in Ireland, because we're so conservative, you know. And I don't know if that comes back from our Catholic upbringing or whatever it is, but we're so conservative that you don't see stuff like that, you know. So, like, again, I suppose in England, the reason why you can buy properties like that, because there's 60 million people in the UK, like, you know, in whatever, New York, just whatever, 10 or...
I don't even know.
You know, I don't know, millions and millions.
Yeah.
In Ireland, what is there, 5.5, 6 million?
Yeah.
You know, and in Dublin, there's probably 1.5 million, you know. So we just don't have the volume of properties there. Now, again, the ERSI are coming out and saying there's going to be another 1 million people living in Dublin by 2030. I don't know where they're going to live.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm kind of saying. Like, this is why I think Dublin house prices are going to get out of the reach of so many people. It's going to become like London or Copenhagen or Paris, because no one really talks about Brexit, what happened in Brexit, because it happened during COVID. And what happened with Brexit was a lot of the professional services came over to Dublin. And a lot of these professional people came over to Dublin, and it's after raising the bar, okay? And so, and again, obviously, those companies are using Dublin or Ireland as a hub now instead of the UK. This might be still used in the UK as well. And it's after pushing prices up, and there's more people with bigger salaries. You look at any of the tech jobs, like, there's people coming into us renting houses, and they're on $250,000 a year. It's crazy. They're coming in, and like, if you said pre-COVID now, it was near impossible to rent anything over 3.5-4 grand. We have a shortage of properties that for 5-6 grand a month
Per month for rent? That's insane.
It's crazy. You think about it. So even 5 grand a month, 60k a year, you need to earn 120k a year just to pay your rent, because you're being taxed half that. If you think about it, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
whoa.
But see, a lot of them, their companies are paying them, or these are professional people coming in, or their managers, or their executives, or directors, or whatever. And obviously, their company will pay it, or whatever. They want to live in certain areas because they want to get into the private schools, or they want to get into this or that. So it's Dublin is really getting, we're catching up, probably with other capital cities, and I feel that. And you can kind of see that gap between the top and, not to say the bottom, but the bottom. And like there's a lot of people in the middle there as well. But I just think honestly, I think in 10 years time, 15 years time, I think first time buyers you won't be buying in Dublin. You won't be buying in Dublin. So I think if you have an opportunity now, work your arse off, and then it could be cute. And if you have rental properties, you'll be wealthy, honestly. So I think it's an incentive for anyone people think stocks and shares and this and that. With property, you name a millionaire, billionaire that doesn't own real estate.
Yeah, true. It's
everyone
few and far between.
Exactly. And Dublin's the place to go. There's no point buying something down in Thurles and Tipperary, because Dublin will always, in a recession, you'll always rent out a property. And so if you are if you can, it's great for me to turn around and say that, but if you can hold on to the property that you buy first and then buy the next property, and it's a killer and it's a sacrifice, do it because
it's worth it in the long run.
Oh yeah, you'll see it, guys, in the long run, so.
Yeah, because I lived in London for just under a year, and when I was going over, everyone was like, "Oh, London's so expensive, be ready for it." But if you just Google most expensive cities in Europe, for example, Dublin is always there or thereabouts in terms of the top 2 or 3 at least. Yeah. And I always wondered what is it about Dublin that makes it so expensive? Because in London, at least you can justify it with access to Premier League football and all this stuff, whereas in Dublin,
only you justify it.
That's one thing, right?
But, no, it is very attractive.
Of course.
And you have all the top firms, and you have all the top financial services kind of companies. Yeah. But with Brexit, a lot of them came over here.
So it's the quality, I suppose, the resources that people who moved over here have just drive the market up, and then it leaves everyone else behind.
And if you look at the likes of your Googles, you look at your Facebook or Meta or whatever they're called now, or any of these kind of companies that have come over, LinkedIn and everything, the reason they're coming to Dublin is because we are very good at what we do. We've brilliant employees, So whereas in other countries maybe don't have that high standard, we're very well educated.
True.
We're hard workers, etc. So again, I think they're coming over here and kind of going, hold on, we can walk in, we can get great staff. It's relatively cheap to buy buildings. Yes, it's millions of euros, but you go to London, you could talk about 4, 5, 10 times that, And then also you're finding it hard to recruit, whereas in over here you have them, and then you also have a lot of people that want to move to Dublin as well. So that's why we have a lot of you have a lot of Indian people and stuff like that coming over, because they're massive in the tech side of it as well, and it's and there's no issues. I didn't
realise how many factors all play into that. It's never as straightforward as you'd like to think, is it?
But the way I always look at it, and I said this to a friend of mine's younger brother as well, and I just said to him, don't worry about all the outside noise. Worry about yourself. Don't worry about what your mates are doing. Don't worry about what the lads in work are doing. You just concentrate on yourself. Have your own goals. Look at what you're going to do. I think you ever see it on social media, bury yourself away for 6 months or 12 months.
Yes,
just do that. You know what I mean? It's like losing weight there. Don't go drinking every weekend. You know what I mean? Just get down, get your head. And if you want to do something, if you want to run, train for a marathon, you can't keep doing what you're doing now. You have to make a sacrifice. If you want to, get on the soccer team and be the best midfielder or the striker, you have to do that extra bit. If you want to play for Dublin, you see the Dublin lads going out and training over the north side at 6:30 in the morning before they go to work, and then going off to train again at 6:30 again in the evening time. I'm sure their wives are delighted with that. It's sacrifice. But again, you win an All-Ireland medal, or sometimes you don't. So it's, again, if you want to buy a property,
sacrifice.
And then the bigger picture is when you get to your 30s and 40s, you have that financial freedom.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about. But people want to get to their 40s and say, but they don't want to do any of the work in their 20s and 30s. They want to be going off on their holidays.
Having the fun.
Yeah. And I know I sound like very doom and gloom here, saying, you're a bit of a, but I think all you have to do is sacrifice. And like I said, for those 2 or 3 years, and it'll make your life. I'll tell you now, financially. Yeah. And wait till you have kids, lads.
Might have to wait a bit longer.
Will I have a house or a kid?
What expenses then?
I can only imagine. But in terms of obviously buying a property, especially as a first time buyer, or if you're looking for your forever home, it's a big decision. And going to somebody like yourselves, there needs to be like a level of trust there between the broker and the person looking to buy or sell. As a businessman, as somebody who's made a living in that space, what have you found works well to build trust with clients?
Being honest with people and just cut out the bullshit. You know, call a spade and say, look, the gas boiler is on its last legs there, lads, but great location, school, you know, and be honest with people. Whereas if you kind of go in and try to be a car salesman about it, people see through that. You know what I mean? People are already kind of thinking, you know, this fecker's trying to rob me for money anyway, like, you know what I mean, and whatever. But I just think if you're honest with people and you give it to them straight, and any of the lads that have come up through the company with me, I've trained them, and I've always said, just cut out the bollocks there and tell them as it is. You know what I mean? Or tell them this is a story with the, you know, whatever. It could be a planning permission going on down the road. Right. You might as well tell them that it's happening, you know, because they're going to find out about it, and then they might pull out with the sale. Or the BER nowadays, you know, people, you know, it's very simple to up your BER, change your boiler, extra insulation, put extra insulation in the attic, change your windows, block up the fireplace, you know, simple. And all of a sudden, a FBER could be a CBER. You know what I mean? Like, so people are scared of. So go in and just give people advice, because a lot of people don't know, and they're at home. Then they're like, I love that house, and you always see people when they come in and they're saying, oh, I'm gonna live in this house, and you can say, oh, they're definitely going to be interested in this house, because they're terrible at negotiation. They're already, oh, that's the TV, and you're going to go, they're going to be coming back anyway. And then they come in with their parents, you know. And if you ever look at a house, always go back a second time to have a look at a house, right? Okay. Because you look at different things. Yes. Where do I put my gear bag? Where do I put the ironing board? You know, Jesus, no storage. You know, I know these are again non-sexy things, but you walk in, you're like, oh, this is Eddie. But the sensible things, Jesus, no wardrobes in this house. Jeez, that's going to cost me $2.5 grand, $3 grand.
Sockets are over there, and it's over here.
And geez, I didn't realize. Sure, I can hear them talking in the next room. Sure, there's nothing between those two walls. You know what I mean? Silly little things. But they always come back with their parents, and the parents are going out knocking on walls. And they're like, you know, they're like, oh Jesus, here to come in, and the parents, oh, this is very expensive, and you know, and whatever. And we always slag, like, so. The main thing, I suppose, is. I can't remember what the question was. I'm after going off on one there, but I think the main thing is, like I said, just I can't remember what the question was.
Building trust with clients.
Building trust with clients, but just be honest with clients, you know. And I think you just have to be, you know. People are so educated now. Like, again, when I bought my first house, there was no there was no websites really. Google, you know what I mean? So you had to go down to the estate agent and ask them, what did that house sell for? Oh yeah, that sold for $250, or that sold, and you have no record of that. Now you have the property price register. So that if you sell a house, it goes up in the property price register in Ireland since 2010. Okay. So if Bono sold his house tomorrow, or the late Gay Byrne, or a celebrity, you could actually see what their house sold for. So there's no more cloak and dagger stuff, so there's no more, geez, what's the house is selling for in the area. You can actually go in and see. So it's a lot more transparent now. So I think people are a lot more clued in. They're also able to go back and Google a property, or Google houses in the housing estate that were up online, and go in and look at that house and say, geez, that house in an extension, and that only went for 400,000, and you're looking for 80 for this one with no extension. You know, so people are a lot more researched now. So you can't bullshit people, like, you know what I mean? So you can try, but you know, I just think you have to be honest with people, and that's what we've always tried to do. I think people might say, geez, you're a bit too honest, but I think it's the best way to be, like, you know. No,
I agree. I don't know if you have a question on that, but I have a question.
Not on that, so you go ahead.
Yeah, because as I was saying, I used to love that $1 Million Listings New York, and you'd always see them, they'd be like on the phone to the seller, like, oh, will you do 250? And then the buyer do 249. How much of that sort of negotiation back and forth is that accurate of what it looks like? Yeah.
So like I said, it'd be tougher than the lads would do, because you have a broker in the middle who's getting paid commission. Sorry, in America. So the way it works in America, it's like they get 6% for selling a property.
Yes.
So if the two of you, you know, you list the property and you're the selling agent, so you're getting 3%, and then there's the broker. So I'm coming in and you're representing me. So, you know, I'd say, here, look, I'm looking for a place in Manhattan, 2-bed, and you contact all the brokers selling, and then you get 3% out of it as well. But if he found the buyer, you get 6%. You get the 3% selling fee as well. It's in your, both is our interest. It's in your interest to sell the property. Whereas in ourselves, obviously the back and forth, we're trying to get the best price for the vendor who's selling the property. So there is a lot of the back and forth, you know, and deals have fallen through over £1,000, you know.
I was going to ask, do you see like ridiculous numbers causing big upsets?
The worst one years ago, I remember, and this is back in the Celtic Tiger years, where we were getting telephone numbers for prices, like it was easy to sell, like it was just ridiculous, and they were getting stupid money. And then I remember this fella, and it was in Clondalkin as well, and I won't say where now, and I always use this as an example because he was a bad bastard, like, you know, and it was the winter time, and he said, I want to get an extra at the very end of the sale, even though the electric appliances were included and everything, fixtures and fittings. So fixture and fitting would be anything stuck onto a wall, you know, a wardrobe, a fireplace, obviously a kitchen, you know what I mean? And he was that bad of a bastard. He said, I want an extra $5,000, and we're kind of going, the contracts are signed, you're not going to give you an extra $5,000, and da. So they came up, they didn't do a final inspection, and they came up to the house, and young family, 2 kids or 3 kids, you know, Irish winter time, it's dark at 3:30, 4 o'clock, piss and rain with the removal truck, and he was that tight. He took the fireplace and he took every bulb in the house. And I didn't even take every bulb. He pulled the light fittings. So they couldn't even put in a bulb and some of the light fittings there. He was that bad of a bastard, like, you know. And that's how bad people are, like, you know. So I've seen everything in the job, like, it's just, and I don't trust anyone now until someone signs a contract.
Yeah.
I've had people in my office crying, promising, swearing on their children's lives, everything, and then the next day pull out of a deal. So, and my mother always gives out to me, and my wife always gives out to me, but I said, I don't care until that contract. And my ma could be over the years, she could be in the car with you or whatever, and you're on the Bluetooth, and she'd be listening to the conversation, and you're having a conversation with somebody, and I'd be like, I don't care, sign the contract. I don't care, sign the contract. Great, we're going to do all, sign the contract. And then she'd be giving out to me, you know, could I go, you know, you're a bit heartless. I said, I don't care, ma'am. I said, I've seen enough people backtracking and lying, and they could be negotiating on a deal, and they're just trying to buy a couple of days, and they're hedging the bets there that if they don't get this one, they get that one. And so it's, you know, that's the hard part about the job, like, you know what I mean? Like the lying that goes on, and, you know.
Yeah. I can imagine. I want to chat a little bit about the actual business itself from an entrepreneurship perspective, and doing a bit of research. So I opened up in Dock in 2005. The next one then was Tala, 2009, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there was like a 4-year gap between the first branch and then the second one opening up. What was it like during those first 4 years and getting the business up and running off the ground?
Yeah, so it was the end of 2005, got it up and running, started from scratch. It was 2 weeks after turning 25, I opened the office, like, you know, so...
Happy birthday.
Yeah, so I hadn't a clue, and 25th of November, and I hadn't a clue. I was eager, I was hungry, and I remember doing leaflet drops and just being hungry. I got a couple of listings on and started building the business. I kind of had a name around Clondalkin, and people knew me and whatever, and started building the business up. And you just do one good job, and then again, like I said earlier on, you were my cheerleader, and they tell their neighbours or their cousin was selling, and just being patient. And then led to another, and luckily enough, the business started to do well. And then, like I said, 2006 obviously started to turn. And this is the government for you. So you're talking about Sinn Féin, and I was talking about Sinn Féin in, you know, making statements in the media every now and again. Like Mary Lou said a couple of months ago, she wants every house price in Dublin down at 300,000, you know? So stupid things like that. But I remember Michael McDowell, there was an election coming up, and Michael McDowell came in and said, if we get into government, we're going to abolish stamp duty. So remember, like I said earlier on, the 317,500.
Yes, yeah.
So you can imagine now you're paying 25 grand stamp duty on a house. And you're thinking, geez, if I hang on 5 months here, I might save the 25 grand.
Yeah.
And then at that stage, I remember the budgets were in December then, not in September. So from September to December, I think I had something like 30 houses sale agreed, and I think 2 of them only closed, you know?
Everyone was holding
off.
Okay.
So obviously your cash flow goes to
Yeah.
And then at that stage, the election was in May. So people are like, and then all the false promises were coming out with the TDs and politicians and political parties. And then around that stage, I don't know if it was Lehman Brothers or something started to collapse, and then the whole place went to shit. So then I had to turn quickly. And in fairness, I had, like I said to you before, I remortgaged a house to set up the business. I had personal loans, I had credit cards, business credit cards. I broke up with a partner that I was with, and I had to pay her out of the house that I was in and do loads of stuff, and I probably gave her too much money at the time, but I just wanted to, I broke up with her, so I really felt guilty. So I remember paying the money and not having a pot to piss in, being a 25, 26 year old, like, you know, and it was, I remember just being tough times. And then for those couple of years then it was just tough. And I remember we had a bank manager, or it was a fella in the bank over in Tallaght in Bank of Ireland, and he was very direct with me, and I hadn't a clue about running the business. My parents aren't business people, like, you know, so none of my brothers are, you know what I mean? I didn't come from a business family, and I hadn't a clue. And I remember him coming in and saying, right, because I was going to default, and at this stage I was saying, worst case scenario, if I lose everything, I'll move home with my mum and dad, or fuck it, my mates are in Australia. You know what I mean? I'll go to Australia. I'll go and work in a bar in America. I didn't care. But I kind of said, no, I have to keep going. And we at that stage, your man, in fairness, is brilliant. And he said, right, you have to consolidate the loans. What are you going to do next year? I was like, I'll sell 100 houses and I'll do 100 lettings. And he was very direct with me. He said, cop the fuck on to yourself. You're not going to do that. Do it again. And I remember I had to do the business plan 3 or 4 times for him before he said, right, we'll accept that. He consolidated all my loans, like all my personal and credit card loans. So when you had one loan instead of 5 or 6 going out, it was killing me. And I had one loan coming out, and that saved me. That actually saved me. If he didn't do that, I wouldn't be here now, you know. And I remember that time, like, and it was like, that much stress and fucking everything, like, you know what I mean. And you can't talk to anyone about it, you know what I mean. So because no one really knows you're a fella, you know what I mean. Like, you know, back then there was no such thing as mental health. So you'd go out at the weekends and get fucking pissed, and that was it. Like, and that was your way of just blocking it out for a couple of hours, and then that was it. And luckily enough, he sorted it out for me, and I got my shit together then. And then I said, right, I'm not selling any houses, because back then you'd go back and say, right, we're listing your house on a 400k, and there was no one to view a house because banks weren't lending. Like, and so you'd go back to them and say, we need to drop your house to 350. So like within 6 weeks, 2 months, we need to drop your house to 300. So within like 3 months, you're like nearly dropping it 100k, grand, like over 2008, 2009. So how I kind of realised then at that stage, right, just fuck all money in selling houses here at the moment, because all it is just, you're talking about anxiety.
Race to the bottom,
You're thinking about anxiety. You're picking up the phone, kind of going, what's the story? There's no one to view it. Oh, and you're like, and then there's obviously defaults. Like, there's no one to view it. Realistically, it's overpriced. And you need to drop it by 60, 70k, and then I'll drop it by 30. And you're kind of going, by the time you drop it by 30, it's a waste of time. You need to drop it by 60 to sell it. So it was just tough times, and we turned into a letting agent. So like, this is where the Ray Cooke Lettings brand came from. So we just turned into a letting agent, and we said, I need cash flow. I need money to come in to pay. There was only 3 of us in the company at that stage, or 2 or 3 of us in the company. And I said, you know what, I have a mortgage to pay, I have whatever. And we just turned into a letting agent. And we'd cold call people, we'd ring people are under pressure, we'd get the business on, we'd let it, we'd get cash flow coming in. Now the fees were absolutely shit, but we were doing such a volume of them, and they were coming in, and that's what saved me. And then in 2008, there was 3 or 4 agents closed in Tallaght, and we were doing loads of business in the area, and we were kind of going, Tallagh's ripe for an office, you know. And I remember, I won't name the person, another agent rang me up when I opened the office in Tallaght and laughed down the phone at me, said, you're a fucking idiot, opening an office, everyone's closing and down. And that was like something like, just press a button and go, I'm going to fucking show you now, like, you know. And obviously Tallaght, massive success. Then we went on and opened up Terranure in 2015, and then between 15 and I think 22, we opened up, the next one was Finglas, then Racool, then Moby Road, and then we opened up Blanchardstown, and we obviously have another unit out in Green Oak then as well. So we have 8 locations. So we went from, I suppose, 3 offices in 9 years to 8 offices then in 18 years, 19 years. So and exploded, like, you know. But obviously we set up other companies as well, like, you know. So the auctioneering business is obviously big, the sale side of it, the letting side of it, the property management side of it, the bank valuations and that side of it. And then we have another company called Ray Cooke Financial Services, does mortgages and life insurance and pensions and stuff like that. And then we have another company that we bought there a year or 2 ago as well, Eldrin as well, which went off, and it goes off, and and it's a relocation agent and a buyer's agent. So because a lot of people are busy now, professional people, and they're coming back from Australia, they don't have time to buy it. The market is crazy, so they contact the buyer's agent and they go out and buy a property, like, you know. So obviously we charge a fee for it. So
unbelievable.
it's great.
Impressive portfolio.
Yeah, what a scale and what a growth, and the fact you were able to solidify during a recession and just drag yourself through that, get out the other end, and now the growth over the last just 10 years has been double what you were doing previously.
It's nuts, yeah.
It's crazy.
Like I remember in 2011, like we sold 13 units, 13 either houses or apartments, you know.
Throughout the year?
Yeah, the whole year.
13,
like, and we're probably going to do 800-900 this year, you know. So you know what I mean. So
The
like
scale,
I said,
yeah.
So it just showed. Like I remember at the time, so all it was lettings. You know, it was just lettings, and it was grand because it was just money coming in. And then what was happening was you were building relationships with people, and then all of a sudden they might sell it in 2 or 3 years' time. So you were getting the sale of it anyway. So we just one part of the business complemented another part of the business, like, you know.
You used the word earlier, and feel free just to tell me to go away, by the way, financial freedom. And you mentioned it, and I think that's an aspiration that me and Lee definitely have. But I think everyone to an extent is chasing it, whether they're conscious of it or not, and to a certain degree. Firstly, are you at a stage now where you'd say you have financial freedom within your life?
Yeah, probably, yeah. So I built over the last 6 or 7 years, like, so again, we're talking about me building the offices there in that time frame. I wasn't the highest paid person in my company during that time frame. Because anytime, the way I look at it was I was able to survive on the money I was on, and there was other people in my company, salespeople, that were earning massive money. But if the company made money, then I'd reinvest it in another office, or I class it as like another business. You know what I mean? Even though it was another Ray Cooke office, it was another business. The way I look at it, so I'd go in and say, right, I'm going to go to Finglas now, the north side. Wow, Jesus, no one knows Ray Cooke on the north side, and and then all of a sudden that exploded, and then we opened 3 offices on the north side now, you know. So and the way I look at that was that other stream of income. So within the Ray Cooke company, if you want to call it, or whatever you want to call it, I got 5 or 6 streams of income.
Okay.
Coming in. So it's not just like it was in 2007 when sales went.
Yeah.
Because I learned from that. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, was the crash, the Celtic Tiger crash. Because if it didn't, I wasn't learning anything in business, because everyone was making money. Like, if you were a gobshite, you were making money. You know, if you're really poor at your job, you were making money. So, and I was probably really poor at my job when I started off, because I hadn't a clue. And then all of a sudden, you know, so what I concentrated on was, right, I need an extra stream of income coming in here, hence why I've set up the other businesses and whatever else there. Then obviously, look, I've bought properties and commercial properties, and I have a few other bits and pieces around there as well, like, you know. So so that's what I always say, is don't just have your job where you have income coming in. Try to have a side hustle. So whether it's a rental property, you know, and then the rental property is bringing in $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month, you know, obviously you're paying a mortgage, you know, but it's a side hustle, it's an extra income. Or maybe you're going off and, you know, you're doing a podcast, and you have, hopefully it takes off for you guys, and you have a stream of income coming in with sponsors or whatever. But don't give up your day job until it keeps coming, you know, or use this, say, well, this is going to be our investment, this is going to buy us the houses, or this is going to buy us the Lamborghinis, or whatever it's going to buy you, like, you know. And use it that way. So I'd always advise, try to have, and this is something I did, and I see a couple of my mates there as well, and they just have the one job, and if something ever happens, they lose that job. You know. So and they have a great life, do you know? And I'm jealous of them in a way. They go off on their holidays and have a great life, and they're home on a Friday at 3:30 and
switch off, and
I never switch off, you know. So
you don't seem like the type.
No. So like I said, and they're relaxed and whatever else, and But I suppose now I'm starting to enjoy what I call financial freedom. Is I can go off on a holiday now and not worry about it. As in relation to, I'm not worried about how much it's costing.
Yes,
You know, going out for a meal and not really looking at the bill. You know what I mean? Like, so going out for just a nice meal, or, you know, whatever. That's financial freedom.
Absolutely.
You know? So, and that's what I call financial freedom, like, you know, so.
Oh, for sure. I have 2 more questions.
Yeah, go ahead, lad.
Yeah. First one would be, and I think I already know the answer. If you could go back and do it all over again, would you do anything differently, or would you have went into the industry that you went into?
I definitely go into the industry because I love it. It's the best job in the world. It really is. If you're into, like, I'd hate to be an accountant, and every first Monday of the month you have to do this for the rest of your life. And the last Friday of it, it would kill me. Whereas in my job, I go in on a Monday, say, right, I have to do these 10 things today, and then come 10 o'clock, I have to put out 3 fires. You know what I mean? Like, just shit coming from everywhere, and I love that. And like, it's, some people will love that and some people don't, but would I change it? No, 100% I wouldn't change it. Would I change things the way I did? Yeah, because I probably burnt the candle at both ends. Like especially, like I've 2 kids now, and I remember the 2 of them were 18 months between each other, like, you know, and I was working 80-hour weeks, you know, and I was just like, I have to build a house, and like, you lost everything throughout the, and you just had to kind of say, you had to work, like, you know, and I was just there thinking, I was only newly married, we had a couple of kids, and I remember just kind of thinking that, you know, what happens if this happens again? Or, you know, I need to be in a position. Yeah. And I remember getting to a stage where, you know, my daughter was maybe 1 or 2, and I was probably nearly going on 2, and my son was maybe 6 months old. And I was going to work in the morning, and they were still asleep, and I was coming home at night time, and my wife had put them to bed. Yeah. And I'd be going out on a Saturday. I'd be going out at 9 o'clock on a Saturday and be back by 5 or 6 o'clock on a Saturday, because you're doing viewings. You're one of the busiest days on a Saturday. So, like I said, and then you're not getting home till 8:30 in the evening time, and then you could be coming home, and you're so like, and then people are ringing you, how did that viewing go? And and then you're switched on, and then you have to start going in and saying, I have to start doing marketing for the business, you know, you have to, and then obviously the social media thing kicked off then as well, and whatever else. So then you're trying to do content, or you're trying to come up with ideas for content, or you're trying to look up stuff, or sometimes your head is just going 100 miles an hour that you just, you know, my wife could be talking to you, you're not, whatever. So, and then I suppose in that time frame as well, I was probably going out, and, you know, to go out to weekends just to fucking numb I was probably going out and drinking with the lads and going out and whatever. So I remember the best advice I got was probably my brother, you know, and he pulled me in, and he basically gave out to me. He said, like, you know, your kids are only going to be young once. You know what I mean? Like, they won't remember the house you're living in, or the size of the house you're living in, or the car but they'll remember you bringing them to training. They'll remember you doing this and that, you know what I mean, and spending time with them. And it was only then there, because I always thought I had to be first in the office, and I had to be last leaving the office. Yeah. You know, I always had to lead by example, and in a way I did, because I had to lead by example, and I had to show them. But I think it probably took me a couple of years then after that, you know, I had to wind down, because like I said to you earlier on there, everyone that rang into the office wanted to speak to Ray, you know, and even though I could have had 6 or 7 offices at that stage, people want to speak to Ray, and we could have 300 houses for sale, you know what I mean? Like, and everyone thinks that I'm dealing with every single one of them. So at that stage I said, right, I'm going to have to step back a little bit from the company, not step back, but visually, as in,
not be as involved,
instead of being, you know, in the front of the office. So instead of now, when you came into the office, I would have been sitting in the main office. Now I sat in the back office where you couldn't see me. Yeah. And then the other lads were there. So if they came in, they'd have to deal with the negotiator, or they'd have to deal with the office manager that was there, you know. And it was simple little things like that. And then I was able to wind myself back. And then I remember I took over the academy in my local GA club, you know what I mean? And just manager of it. But I had to be down at 5 o'clock to set up the drills. And I know it sounds something simple, lads, right? But for me to finish work I had to be down around 5:15. For me to finish at 5 o'clock, you know, or leave the office, I could have been on the north side at that stage, and to leave the office at 4:15 to get home for 5 o'clock the M50, like, you know what I mean? And to get home and to get down and set the drills, that was like, you know, that was like me having a half day, like. You know what I mean? Like, so that took me years. Even to this day now, if I'm like heading home at 3:30, I feel guilty. Like, you know what I mean? Like, terrible. Like, but that was the best thing I ever did in relation to just kind of winding back from work, delegating as well, because I think if I didn't delegate, my first boss that I worked in, an estate agent, he died 6 weeks after turning 40 of a massive heart attack. And I always said, because like the Celtic Tiger years were so tough, and I always said, anyone that knows me says, look, if I get to 40, I'd be delighted. You know what I mean? And I said that for years, and now I'm 43, I'm kind of going, fuck it, like, you know, I want to get to 50 or 60 now, you know. But like, I always said that because it is a stressful job, like, you know what I mean? And you have to be, you know, like, the toughest part of my job now is managing people, because, you know, even though 2 of you are brothers and twins, both of you are completely different. You know what I mean? And I don't know you that well, you know, but completely different. Like, you know, you might have completely different way of life, or what way you look at it, or whatever. Or in work, you might be completely different. One of you might be like, oh, a lunatic, and the other one's real laid back. Or someone, you might need a kick up the arse where the other one needs a arm around you, and, you know, you're the best in the world, or whatever. So again, that's the toughest part of my job, is always, you know, dealing with people. But would I change it? No, not a bit of it.
No. Nice answer. Last question from me. What advice would you give to any young person, whether it be your own sons that come to you one day, or us two sitting here who are interested in entrepreneurship, looking to start their own business? What would be some advice you'd pass on?
Fuck it. Go for it. Put everything into it. You know, worst case scenario, you can start again. Because if you leave it until your 30s, you know, you're going to have a mortgage, you know, you're going to maybe have a kid, you know, and you won't do it. The 20s is the time to make your mistakes, to make your fuck ups, to make anything like that. So I was always the attitude, like with the Tala office, like, you know, I didn't even have money to open up the Tala office, like, you know what I mean? I swear it was ridiculous, like, when I look back on it, like, you know, but it was kind of like, if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Yes.
It would have just been at me. You know what I mean? And I'd be fair to do something and fail at it than not to do it at all.
Yeah.
So will you be, like, what age are you guys now? 25. So when you're 65, you know, are you going to have regrets? I've no regrets. In business, I've no regrets. You know? So like I said, so my attitude is fuck it. Just go with it. Whatever you have to do, just get it done. Doesn't matter what you have to do. Sell your car, fucking go down and live in the back end of Kerry for a year. Whatever you have to do, just do it.
All in.
All in. And then you'll have no regrets. You know what I mean? And you can always get a job at McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like, you can always go off and whatever, start again, get an apprenticeship again. Like a good few of my mates, you know, coming out of Celtic Tiger, you know, they're working in the building trade. There was and they're gone off to IT and they're gone off to different jobs now, like, you know, or they've gone off, they went back to college, you know, with kids in their 30s, you know, going back to college, you know, in the evening time and doing a 4-year course to be an engineer and doing bits and pieces, whatever. So, like, do it and don't have any regrets about it, like, you know. And that's all I'd say is, pardon my language, but fuck it. Just do it. Like, and don't worry about what your mom and dad are saying. Don't worry about your mates are saying. Again, just worry. Again, I was always my thing. I was in a bubble, and none of my mates knew what I was doing. None of my mates knew what I was building because I'd never told them anything. I wouldn't tell them anything about what I was doing. And now they can see it, but they didn't know what I was doing. And then all of a sudden they'd say, oh, fuck this fucker, I see signs going into town.
Yeah.
Fuck, you know, and be ringing me, like, you know. Or when I started doing the social media stuff, I was just getting, like, I don't know what your mates are like. My circle mates are the most slagging bastards in the world. So all of a sudden they're just dogging you, like, you know, the WhatsApp group would be just, or back then I think it was a Viber group or whatever it was, and they'd be just dogging you, like, and the abuse to be given and whatever else. And you just get into your own bubble and you just turn around and you're just focused. I knew what I wanted to be like when I was growing up. Like I said to you, I wanted to be all I wanted to be was a millionaire. But I also, like, in Racool, I lived in a brilliant house in Racool, and you know, but I always wanted to have a house up the hill, you know, and I always wanted to have a view of Dublin, you know what I mean? And now I have it, you know what I mean? Like, so, but that was one of my goals, and that was, you know, what I wanted to do, like, you know, and it was just focused. And I was, again, you're talking about comfortable, like, as we bought that house, I remember at the time, and again, everything that I'm after saying in this podcast, I've done it. I'm not saying, oh, it's looking great, like, and my mum and dad are there giving me $100,000. My mum and dad weren't that financial, you know, they looked after us, they were the best parents in the world, but they weren't that way financially, like that they could go off and give me $200,000 to buy a house, like, you know. And so we had to go off and do it ourselves. And I remember when we got married, like, we were living in an apartment, you know, and we bought a house. It was actually next door to my mum and dad, and we were able to get it was a good price back then, but sorry, it's a great price when you look back now. But at the time, we had just got married, spent $25,000 on a fucking wedding, madness. But we did at the time, nice honeymoon, and then all of a sudden we were saving, and we got this house, and we had $7,000 to do it up. So I remember coming home at 8:30 at night. I go into my mum would have dinner, and you go in and start scraping wallpaper off or doing whatever off and whatever. And you got the house rented out. And we lived in the apartment for another 2 or 3 years before we had the money to do the house. You know what I mean? And, like, obviously 2 kids at that stage and whatever else. So living in an apartment where someone else has a 4-bed house that they're living in that we own, but we didn't have the money. So it was the sacrifice that we said we were able to save the money and then go off and do the house. And then finally, when we're in our dream house, I'm seeing a house up the hill that had half burnt down, and I'm kind of going, fuck it. And I remember buying the house and buying it at auction and not even having loan approval. I swear to God, I remember at the time, like, you know, and but I know what I'm going to do. I'll do whatever I have to do to get this, like, you know. And remember getting it, and I think we bought it. I think it was a site and everything was like 400k. I think that 40k at the time, you know, because we only have to build in the house. And I think we set up another office. We had opened another office as well, and I had put the money into the office, and I scraped the money. I got it from everywhere and anywhere, like, you know. And that's what I'm just trying to say, like, as in, you just sacrifices in life. And now you're asking me, am I financially free? Yeah, because I broke my bollocks in my 20s and my 30s to get to that level. So now I'm 43, and technically, do I have to go in and work another day in my life? No, because the offices will run themselves now because I have a brilliant team.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I'm after putting that work into it. Now, of course, I'm going to go and work. I love work.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't, like, I go off on a 2-week holiday and I'm looking on my phone and I'm on the phone. I can't wait to get back to work, like, you know. I think my wife would kill me now. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. So, you know.
No, you went all in and it paid off.
You did.
And it's not, I'm not saying I'm great. It's just, and I wasn't the smartest fella in the world. Like, I remember we went to Rackhool school, and there's 6 levels. There's R1, which are all A students, and there's R6 who are the dunce lads. I was kind of in R4 and R3 there, like, you know what I mean? So I was the medium. I was happy just to scrape by. Like, I wasn't that good, but if you put me into a job, I'd outwork you.
Yeah.
I'd be better at you, at everything. You know, I'd go in and I work that you might be 10 times smarter than me, but I'd outwork you. And that's, I suppose, something that I'd always looked at. I can always outwork you. And that was, I suppose, that's my probably skill set, you know?
Oh, I love it.
Beautiful, man. I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up, and what a message to leave it on. Right. Thanks so much for your time, your wisdom, your expertise. I've learned so much just sitting across from me and having this conversation. So I'm sure everyone watching and listening will get the same value. So thank you, and chat soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.